I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. My cross I'll carry till I see Jesus. My cross I'll carry till I see Jesus. My cross I'll carry till I see Jesus. No turning back, I'll follow him. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we're mindful and thankful for this day that you've given us and the blessings of life, Father, that you bestow upon us each day. And we thank you for your Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ, and this Bible study hour that we have to learn more about Him, Father, and His teachings. And be with each one of us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Good morning. This must be getting close to summertime. Everybody's vacationing, looks like. There's an old preacher a long time ago, he used to call it the summer slump. And then one year he said, we're going to turn this into the summer hump. I don't think it ever humped. It stayed a slump. On our prayer list this morning, M.D. Anderson in Houston, I suppose that's a hospital. Ronnie Scott will be going there. He has cancer. He'll be going there on the 15th. Which Scott is that? Who? I can't hear you, honey. Up at Tick. I can't recall. He goes where? Flint's Creek. I'll have to get you guys a microphone back there where I can hear you. Well, the rest are at home and under the weather. Brett Bush says he's cancer-free at this time, which is always good. Edith Mitchell's still home. Ray Oliver Jones has bladder cancer. Golly. Tom Gothard test will be the end of June. And then David Gothard test turned out great. Had a lot of trouble taking it, but it worked out fine. Are there any others we need to add to our prayer list? Well, if that's that, we'll just stop. Stop while you're ahead, don't you, Mark? Whew. Do what? Oh, hi, Edith. Why didn't you tell me you were here? I'm going to take you off our prayer list before somebody else announces you. I'm going to do them one better than they did me. It's always nicer to cross it off. I don't know how I wound up with so many ink pens in this jacket. We're studying 1 Peter chapter 4 this morning. Is where we begin. Has to do with special duties from the Lord, things He would have us to do. We discussed this some last week, verses 1 and 2, I believe. Therefore, since Christ also suffered for us in the flesh, arm yourselves also with the same mind. Since Jesus was willing to suffer for righteousness' sake when He dwelt in flesh, set your mind where you think like he does. You be willing to suffer in the flesh also for righteousness' sake, if necessary. Why? For he who has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin. Does everybody understand that statement there? It's a little bit challenging. For he who has suffered in flesh has ceased from sin. The article shouldn't be in there. It says the flesh, because that's not really, it's not in the text. It's he who has suffered in flesh has ceased from sin. It doesn't sound like much, but it is a big deal if you're trying to defend the Bible on what Peter's written here. You suffer from in the flesh. How you suffer in the flesh? Well, I've been crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. How do we suffer in flesh? We've been crucified. Okay? We were crucified. We suffered death. And now he who has suffered in flesh died to sin. He has ceased from sin, right? You're not going to sin anymore. That's the idea. You die in flesh, you suffer in flesh, and you cease from sinning. That's all Peter's saying here. It's not hard. He who has suffered in flesh has ceased from sin. Sometimes people want to make an argument using suffering in flesh is standing up for what's right and suffering. And it's true, that is true, but it's not exclusively. The overall principle Peter's teaching is that because we have been crucified in flesh, we now set our minds to live in spirit, which means we cease from sin. We don't sin anymore. We quit sinning. Now, what does that mean, we quit sinning? It doesn't mean we never sin. John said if we say we never sin, we're a liar and the truth's not in us. Well, what are we saying? We're saying we don't live a life of sin. Okay? You might be a thief, for example. If you've been crucified in flesh, then you're going to quit stealing as a way of making a living. Does that mean you'll never sin? No, it doesn't mean you'll never sin. You'll sin occasionally. We all sin. We can't deny the fact that we do. And we don't want to deny it, because if we do, we're in trouble, because we make Christ a liar. And we can't do that. So this is what Peter means. It's a reasonable conclusion that when you've been wedded to the Christ, you've put sin away. He who has suffered in flesh has ceased from sin. Why? That he no longer should live the rest of his time in flesh. You can see that Peter has on his mind the big picture. The fact that you were crucified to Christ. Your whole mindset is changed. You avoid sin as best you can. But when you do sin, you don't continue in it like some people do. A person can be cleaned of adultery, but you have to quit. You have to stop committing adultery. Adultery is adultery, whether you're a Christian or not. It doesn't make any difference. But sometimes now they say if a person is living in adultery and they get baptized, they can become a member of the church and start teaching a Bible class. This is very common now. No, you can't do that. When you are baptized into Christ, when you have crucified the old man, then you stop living in adultery. You can't continue in a sinful situation because it's still a sinful situation. The idea that's popular in our culture today is that adultery is a sin, for example, but if you get baptized or if you ask for forgiveness, uh, even though you're doing the same act you did before, it's not a sin anymore. Forgiveness from God changes the status of what was classified as sin. It ceases to be a sin. And if you want to see whether this idea has become popular among churches of Christ, just look at how many adulterers are in churches of Christ. Doing just about everything and anything. Well, you got women elders, you might as well do the rest, I guess, huh? Anyway, whatever other people do, it's not us. What we do is what we do, okay? That's why we got these congregations, is so that we won't get caught up in the error of the church, so-called. The church has its rules. Preachers, you all probably don't follow preachers like I do, but there's these cliques in the church, this group versus that group versus another group. And I think just about all of them are disfellowship each other. And if you fellowship them, I don't know how many times I've been disfellowshipped, because I fellowshipped this fellow over here who these people have disfellowshipped. And because they disfellowship this guy, whenever I have something to do with him, they disfellowship me because I'm fellowshipping a disfellowship preacher. It's crazy, right? It's going on everywhere. But that doesn't have anything to do with us. We take care of our business. That's what we do. And let the chips fall where they may. As for us, we've armed ourselves with the mind of Christ. We try to avoid sin, and we certainly don't engage in sinning. For the lusts of men, the rest of the time in flesh for the lusts of men, but we live instead now for the will of God. We used to follow our lusts. We were driven by our lusts. This is what taught us what was right and wrong, what we ought to do or not do. We were governed by our own personal lusts. Now, this is something else that's you want to be clear on, because it's a idea that many folks have. Is that well, Ronald was talking about the other day, I believe, my truth and your truth. That's what that's all about. You have your truth and I have my truth. Okay, what I'm doing is good for me. What you're doing is good for you. Now, who are you to judge me? Okay. This is a philosophy that is prevalent in our culture because it gives people the right to live in sin without having to think about being condemned by Almighty God. If it's right to me, then it's the right thing to do. Okay? Now, before I become a Christian, that's the way I lived. I lived that way. You probably did too. I determined right and wrong by what I wanted to do or not do, what I thought was right and wrong. If I thought it was right to do something, I did it. If I thought it was wrong to do something, I tried to avoid it. But this is a very popular philosophy among people. What does it do? It makes every person their own law. If that were true, if every person was their own law, every person decided for themselves what was right and wrong, then you would have chaos. This fellow says, well, it's right for me to rape this woman. and he raped her. Well, can you persecute him for doing that? I believe it was back in the 1930s. I can't remember the name of the case anymore. But there was a case somewhere up north where two guys had raped a woman. I don't remember if they killed her or not. I think maybe they did. And they got caught. And they went to court up north. And this argument was their plea. This is their defense. To us, it was right to do this. We live by the law of the jungle. We are our own moral code. If we think it's right to do this, then for us it's right to do it. And they could not defend it. They could not prosecute that philosophy because it was so common in the culture that they wound up. They didn't let him go, but they gave him an abbreviated sentence. They were supposed to have been put to death because at the time, well, of course, murder was a capital crime, but back then, rape was a capital crime too. I mean, they had a double whammy hanging over their heads. So they were supposed to have been put to death, and what it wound up being, they went to jail, I don't know how many years, you know how they get out on parole and all that stuff, but they would be paroled one day and get out, and I guess they did, I don't remember. But it was over this very argument. That's back in the 1930s. It was a real big case in the United States. Most everybody knew about it because it was crazy. But it was the way people lived in their minds. The Roaring Twenties is a good indicator of what the mentality of people was. In the 1920s, man, it was bad. There wasn't a moral code at all, hardly. But if you don't have a moral code from God, then your moral code has to come from man. Now, it could be your moral code might come from, say, the state of Tennessee. What Tennessee calls right, you call right. What they call wrong, you call wrong. It may be where you work. What they call right is right. What you call wrong is wrong. There are always going to be points of reference for your moral code, and that's how you're going to determine what you have to have one. You have to have a point of reference. But first and foremost, it's going to be yourself. It's going to be your own. Remember back in the book of Judges, in those days there was no king in Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes. Same philosophy, very same philosophy. If you don't live by the philosophy of God, if you don't live by the moral code of God, then you live by the moral code of man, whether it's yourself or some group. But you do follow a moral code. Everybody does. And that is very dangerous. That means there's no right, there's no wrong. It's like them guys argued. To us, it was right to rape this person, and I'm pretty sure they murdered her when they raped her after they got done. But for us, it was right to do it. The law of the jungle. It's the way animals behave. Nobody can argue that. A dog would do as much. We're just animals, according to them. The problem is that it's invaded religion also. It's invaded religion. It used to bother me. It didn't bother me. It used to bumfuzzle me, I guess. But the church, through the centuries, has grown most when it was under persecution. Whenever it was easy going for the church, for the most part, the church becomes lazy, sluggish, indifferent to what's righteous or not. Devotion is not much. But when persecution is in process, two things happen. Number one, people become, it seems like at least, become more dedicated to God and the principles of God. And number two, they pass it on to someone else. The church grows during such times. During times of affliction, I used to think, nobody would want to be a Christian because, hey, this is a bad way to go. But it's just the opposite in reality. In the first century, for example, the church was persecuted like crazy, even in, say, Jerusalem, for example. And the Jewish Christians, they had to leave. They had to flee. They left their homes. They left everything. They had to flee for their lives. And at the same time, they were making Christians in Judea hand over fist. The Christian population in Jerusalem grew to be 4 times what it started out as. How could it grow when it's being persecuted that way? I always thought that was amazing. But then you go through history and you find out it's that way all the way up till present day. One of the best things that could happen to the church as far as our personal salvation and the strength of the church is for us to come under persecution, because we fortify ourselves. We become what we profess to be. We hold on to God with both hands. I guess because we've got nothing else to hold on to. We're pushed into a corner and we hold on with all our might. These are the kinds of people the apostles are writing to, keep in mind. They're writing to people who are holding on as tight as they can because their lives are very difficult in most places throughout the Roman Empire during the first, second, third centuries. And the church grew in leaps and bounds. And her strength was, she was so strong that it was actually said that the apostles had turned the world upside down. That's how fast she grew. I've always wondered which is better for us, to be persecuted or not. As far as comfort goes, that's a big not. But as far as salvation goes, might be a big plus. I don't know. Anyway, he who has suffered in the flesh, he who has died, has ceased from sin. He no longer lives the rest of his time in flesh, following the lusts of men, but he lives for the will of God. This is his driving force. For we have spent enough of our past lifetime in doing the will of the Gentiles. What were we doing? We walked in lewdness, lust, drunkenness, revelries, drinking parties, and abominable idolatries. We behaved just like the Gentiles. That's can't say they weren't religious because they were, but these, let's call them unbelievers, okay? We were an unbeliever. We were doing the will of unbelievers. And how did we live? We lived just like unbelievers. We did whatever we wanted to do. In regard to these, that is, in regard to the lewdness, drunkenness, etc., they, which would be the people still participating in those kinds of things, we participated with them. We were crucified in flesh, and we no longer participate in such activities. But there were many people that we knew who still participate in those very activities. Now, in regard to these activities and your abstinence to them, they, your own friends, they think it is a strange thing that you do not run with them in the same flood of dissipation. The word dissipation, it means a deceptive, unrestrained, undisciplined life. Now, I don't know if you can remember back that far, but I can. I lived an unrestrained life. I did what I wanted to do, paid the piper for it sometimes, but I always did what I wanted to do, and I didn't have a reason not to. There was nothing in my life that told me not to do the things I was doing. I did them anyway. It was a flood. That is an enormous amount, an enormous amount of sinful activity. Of course, if your moral code's shot, you're going to be involved in an enormous amount of sinful activity. That is, the same people, the same practices that you ran with before your conversion. We look at somebody who is living in sin. What am I seeing? I'm seeing a picture of me, where I was, what I was. I don't need to look down my nose at anybody because I've been there. I'm not better than anybody. I don't need to look down my nose at anybody. I believe they're wrong. I believe they're following the wrong moral code. But what can I say about it? I've done the same thing. That's between them and God. Now they speak evil of you. Why? Because you don't participate. You got your nose stuck in the air. You think you're better than us. How many of you, when you got converted to Christ, how many of you had friends who thought you thought you were better than them? That you turned your nose up in the air. That now that you're a Christian, you're better than they are. That's a very common feeling that people who live in the world, that's a common feeling that they experience with regards to those friends of theirs who ceased living that way and started going in the way of righteousness. They think they're stuck up. They think they're better than they are. It's a thing that takes place. They think it is strange. Why? Why would it be strange? Well, different reasons. One thing, everybody else is doing it. What's the big deal? What's wrong with drinking alcohol as a beverage? Everybody does it. I mean, my goodness, you watch on TV and a Catholic priest will sit down and have a beer with somebody, or they'll go into a beer joint and have a beer. The Catholics obviously believe it's okay to drink alcohol socially. And what about all the other religious groups? What about Churches of Christ? There are Churches of Christ, same thing. I remember down here in Gainesboro when I had a debate with some of the elders down there over this liquor that came into Gainesboro, whether you should be drinking alcohol as a beverage or not. And some men down there who were elders were defending the right to drink. I think it's because they were going to own part of the liquor store, but you know how that goes, right? But they defended it vehemently, and they call themselves Christian. Everybody else is doing it. Why is it strange for us to do it? Why is it wrong for us to do it? You just think you're better than we are. Yeah, you think you're better. You got your nose turned up. Jesus' brother thought he was beside himself, Mark 3:21. His brothers thought he was losing his mind. Why? Because of the things he was doing, the things he was saying. He had turned into a freak. What's the matter with you, man? You grew up in the same house just like we do, and now you're going out talking all this stuff you talk. What's wrong with you, boy? You never went to school. You don't know how to talk such things. They thought he was beside himself. Maybe he's got a devil. Something's wrong with him. They didn't have anything to do with him. They had no association with him as far as his spiritual activities were concerned. They thought he was weird. Well, was he weird? Well, by their standard, he was. He was different. Festus thought Paul was mad. Paul, you're losing your mind. in Acts 26:24. Your religion has gotten into your head. You ever hear that before? You know how many times I was told, John, you got to quit studying the Bible. That thing will make you crazy. I don't know how many times I've been told that through the years. That thing's going to make you crazy, son. You can't study that thing all the time. You know, you're getting kind of weird already. You don't need to be studying that. You got to quit. That used to be the way a lot of people thought. The Bible's going to get inside you and turn you inside out. Well, it kind of does, though, doesn't it? Turns you inside out, makes you a different person. Strange person. Strange people, them Christian people. You gave up the good life, and what did you give it up for? What did you gain? You can't have fun anymore like we can. We can still have fun. We can go out and drink, have a big party. We can go to the car races and do that, or we can go to a ball game. Man, what are you doing? You're sitting at home watching the TV, watching the ball game on TV. Oh my, what a humdrum life you live. It doesn't have to be that way. You could be better off than that. Now, I've been there, and now I'm here. I'm going to tell you what, there ain't got nothing on here. There is when you wake up in the morning, you're sick as a dog, and you're broke, and it's only Saturday morning. That's what there's all about. But anyway, we're considered weird because we don't participate. They, those you once ran with, those who now speak evil of you, he's trying to encourage them not to give up. They will give an account to him, that is Christ, who is ready to judge the living and the dead. For this reason, because there is a day of judgment coming, because the world will be judged by one moral code, regardless of what people live by, regardless of what code they live by. They're going to be judged according to God's code. That's the only philosophy that matters. Nothing else is going to matter. Well, I can do whatever I want to do. You sure can. You can do whatever you want to do. But all I'm saying is that in the day of judgment, you and I and everybody else is going to be judged by one moral code, and that will be God's. For this reason, the gospel was preached also to those who are dead. Now, here we go back into these twisted words again. Those who are dead, what's he talking about? The gospel was preached to those who are dead. Is he talking about spiritually dead or physically dead? It's kind of hard to tell. Those who were spiritually dead would just be sinners in general. If those who are now physically dead, then obviously the gospel was preached to them back when they were alive. And since then, they have died. Spiritually or physically, pick whichever one you want, but both of them are going to wind up on those two lines of thought. And the reason that they might be judged according to men in the flesh, but living according to God in spirit. All people are going to be judged by God's standard. That's basically all he's saying. We can live as men do in the flesh if we choose to do so, but we're going to be judged spiritually by God's moral code in the last day. People we know, people we've known, and even ourselves. Nothing can happen to anybody that's worse than being rejected by God in the day of judgment. Nothing. I've tried to think about the torment after judgment. Uh, I can't comprehend it. I'll be honest with you. I know what's going to happen. I know it's going to be torment, and I know it's never going to end. But I don't know what torment is going to feel like, and I don't know the fact that it's going to be eternal. I can't digest that. Intellectually, I know what that means, but I can't digest the concept of living in everlasting punishment that will never have an end to it. I can't digest that. Everything I've ever suffered in my life, it came to a halt eventually. You hurt, and it stops. It always stops. But when this happens, it won't stop because it's eternal. And it's the most terrifying thought I've ever tried to entertain. My thoughts of it have been weak, to say the least, but there's nothing worse. Nothing worse. And we have friends who are going to lose their souls. We got people we love who are going to lose their souls. We ought to be looking after them, I think. I heard an atheist one time on television, and he said, if I really believed that there was going to be a hell that the unrighteous would have to experience, if I really believed that was true, he said, number one, I would do everything in my power to save myself from going to such a place. I'd give myself totally to Jesus Christ, and I would never look back. And number two, I would do everything in my power to try to persuade the people I know and care about to see the light and come unto life. He said, that's what I would do if I really believed. He said, but I don't believe, so I'm not going to do either one. But if a person really believes in everlasting life and everlasting punishment, if you really believe that, what would you do? Well, we know because we're already doing it. We're doing what we were required to do.
I read one time that a guy who was talking about eternal punishment, how hard it was to grasp the concept of it. And he said it's hard for us to understand because we're sinners. And we think, that it will last that long, maybe 1,000 years, 2,000 years. He said the only one who can make that determination is a righteous judge who is sinless because he knows the extremity of the wrong, the wrongness that sin causes, and that's God. He will give the right punishment for crime. We can't comprehend that. His illustration was if you're being charged for murder, you want murderers on the jury, but the person who experienced the death of that person who murdered, they don't want those people on the jury. They want people who haven't committed murder. When I read that, it made a lot more sense.
Yeah, but he's got the right idea. I've always been impressed, especially when the Lord was going to Jerusalem during the Passion Week, and as he come down He called a mountain over there, but we call it a hill here. He's coming down off that big hill, and when you come around this curve, all of a sudden the city of Jerusalem opens up before you. You can see the whole city. Back then it wasn't that big, but only had about 500,000 people live there, I think. Josephus says 2 million, but I think it's more like 500,000, maybe 3/4. Anyway, when the Lord coming down that mountain, he saw Jerusalem open up before him, and he stopped and he started bawling. It's the only time I ever read it in the Bible. He started crying, is what it says. But the word, the original word, he was bawling like a baby. I mean, he broke down, and he was shedding alligator tears, and everybody was shocked at his response when he saw that city, and what it was. He cried over the city because he knew what was going to happen to him. I mean, he was going to go down there and be crucified. But that's not why he cried. He cried because of what he was going to have to do to them. And his torment was amazing. I've always wondered when Jesus was crucified, what hurt him most, whether it was the destruction of his flesh or the gnashing at his soul. And personally, I think it was the gnashing at his soul that troubled him the most. He loved people so much that because he knew what the lake of fire was, he built it. And because he knew what it was, it broke his heart that human beings would have to go to such a place. I've heard people say they know what hell is like or heaven, but I don't. I try, get a rough idea, but it's going to be something else. Something very bad. Even the atheists knew if hell is what it's claimed to be, you sure don't want to go there. Christians are strange people. That's what Peter's arguing. Perceived as strange in the eyes of some people. I'd already said this. I've been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ now lives in me. How? Life which I now live in flesh. I live by faith in the Son of God. Romans 10:17, who loved me and gave himself for me. Boy, I had a lot of words in that one, didn't I? One-time sinners are now saints. Why? Let's go back and see why. Getting carried away with my buttons. Trying to hurry up. Why give up freedom? Why did we do it? Well, push the wrong button. Many don't get it. That's one of the problems for unbelievers. They don't get it. I never got it. I never understood why people would give up the good life to go to church. People at church were always uptight, and they didn't seem like they had fun. And they seemed to be against everything, and they had no pleasure at all. And I used to wonder, why in the world would somebody, give up living to do that? That just, to me, it seemed bad. It didn't seem good. I didn't get it. And I think many people don't get it. They don't understand us. They don't understand what drives us or motivates us. To unbeliever, life has no purpose. It just is. You get up, you do, you go to bed. You get up, you do, you go to bed, day after day after day. Happiness, pleasure, excitement is life's chief goal. That's what we look at. It's finally Friday. I'm free again. I got my motor running for a wild weekend. Cut me loose. That's happiness. That's pleasure. That's joy. And it used to be. Boy, I used to wait for Friday, something fierce. I waited for Friday so bad, I usually laid out on Friday. Fulfilling fleshly lusts do not violate the conscience. They can't see the case for Jesus or Christianity. They can't accept denominationalism. They don't believe or fear the day of judgment. Oh, I got done. We'll continue here, Lord willing, next week.